Hello, welcome. This is Truth, Beer, and Podsequences. We are on episode
26.5.
26.5.
Yeah.
So we got the 0.5. So all of us at the table, if you listen to episode 26, we're still here. We're going to create a little bit more content for you.
And just in case there's someone that's listening that didn't listen to the main episode,
True.
the people that
should.
are
You
sitting
should.
around, you should, 100%.
Because I'm going to make
should.
some kind of fluffy waffles.
Fluffy
joke.
waffles, gravy
Fluffy
later.
wobbles.
I'm Marco,
I'm Julia, and our guest.
I'm the Gnarly Gnome.
the Gnarly Gnome.
Yeah.
We're all having 18th Street Brewery's Uncrushable West Coast India Pale Ale. Fantastic beer. I have had it on the show a couple times.
Is it officially a celebration beer for Adina Brewing's 3rd anniversary?
It is. It is.
I believe so.
Correct.
I believe
Yes. So the
Yes.
label on this, if you happen to see a can out in the wild, I don't think it's been out for a while unless someo's had it for a little bit. I don't know if they're still
Yeah,
making it.
It's been a bit.
There is a beautiful turtle, which reminds me of the Sheltow Trace Trail down in Red River Gorge turtle with 3 I 1, 2, 3 slash marks, whatever,
Yeah,
on the
think-
shell
could be
for
maybe-
the 3rd
maybe-
anniversary.
Or it could be just some kind of claw. He was attacked by
You
something.
know what? I bet those
Yeah.
are tiger claw
Wolverine.
marks.
Could
Well,
be
I
tiger
think
claw.
maybe the
Because, as we all
Uncrushable is
know-
because of the turtle shell. It's uncrushable.
Ooh, yeah, he did. He
Yes.
didn't get crushed.
So, in honor of the sports ball teams, I'm going to say that the turtle represents the Chiefs somehow. I'm sure there is a 5 degrees of Kevin Bacon to make that happen.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
the turtle is the Chiefs, and the 3 slash marks on the turtle shell are from our Cincinnati Bengals.
The Adina, the name in Adina comes from Indian tribe that was native to this area.
yeah,
Yep.
and it
Native
translates
peoples and
roughly
chiefs. I bet
to
they have
tiger.
a chief. I bet they had a chief.
Yeah, I bet they did have a chief, and I bet a tiger defeated that chief.
Whoa.
Yeah, I don't
know.
know. There was a lot of tigers around here at that time.
There are a couple at the Cincinnati Zoo, and there were some in, was it Waynesville, that escaped several years back?
That's true.
They could
Yes,
have made
that's
their way
true.
to this area.
It did happen.
The time I think doesn't add up to when the Adina people were here, though. I think
No.
there might be
This-
the zoo and the Adina
This is our
people.
truth.
Yeah, I mean.
So
hold
what we're
on.
going to do
Sure,
is we're going to say that
Yeah. Thank you.
this beer is very crushable if you're in a safe
It
location
is
to crush it.
uncrushable.
Uncrushable.
It's very
Okay.
very
Okay.
uncrushable.
It's uncrushable. Can't
Like the
crush it.
Bengals.
Yep.
Not like a turtle shell.
Oh,
That's-
I'm
it-
trying.
it
I am
is-
trying really hard.
And that's
guys.
the Bengals as far as the team, not the band. Right?
not the band,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Yes.
Walk like
Just
an
making sure.
I was just going to say there are no
Egyptian.
Egyptians going on. So,
So-
have both of you gone ahead and
I
given
took
this
a
a...
cool
Yeah,
sip,
yeah,
sip.
yeah.
Talk
Go ahead,
about it while
Julia.
I drink.
So now that, since we have, not now that, but since the gnome is here and has transitioned from his typical 9 to 5 to
9
full
to
time,
5.
do it, Julie,
Oh.
to full time
More like a 5 to
babysitter.
9 now.
babysitter and content creator.
Yeah.
And you don't babysit when they're your kids. You are parenting.
My oldest makes me babysit things quite often.
Okay.
Goodness.
Very
She
good.
has a stuffed sloth named Daisy. I have to watch the sloth. And also lots of baby dolls.
What's it going to do? I mean, what you have to watch it? Is it
I
going to
don't
do
know.
tricks?
I don't know. I think they're slow, but I'm just always watching just in case.
Okay.
Well,
don't
they're slow while you're watching them, but once you look away, that's when
Right.
things happen.
Right.
You know?
There was a do-up about you in, what was that, Cincinnati Magazine?
Mm-hmm.
A doo-wop. Oh, gotcha. I thought it was some kind of doo-wop, and I was waiting for
Yeah.
the song.
A do-wop. Do-up. What was it? 3 questions, 4 questions. Most of
Something
them
like
you
that.
skirted actually answering directly.
I answered exactly how they need answered.
I don't disagree. The problem was with the question.
For the record, anytime that anybody wants to interview me or have me on their show or anything like that, don't ask me what my favorite brewery is. Don't ask me what my favorite beer is, because the answers are always going to be the same, and they are not dishonest answers. But
Your
it's-
favorite beer is
it's
always
not
the
gonna
beer
be-
that's in front of you.
It's not going to be what you want it to be.
Unless it's a beer that's over a year old that is in front of you.
You know,
then it's not your favorite
I
beer.
don't know that that's still not true though.
Okay,
Like it would
that's
still
fair.
be at that moment. It could be my favorite beer at that moment.
Yeah,
Just
well,
depends.
but congratulations,
Thank
because
you.
that, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That
Fun
has
little
not.
cartoon of me. I always appreciate that.
Who
Yeah.
did that? Who did the
Cincinnati
cartoon?
Magazine did it.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know.
All right.
That's really cool. I mean, Julia, have you had a cartoon of you on Cincinnati Magazine?
I have not.
I haven't either. So,
Yeah.
I mean, you're,
leaps and bounds above
way ahead of
where we
us.
are,
So,
yeah.
congratulations
Well,
to
thank
you.
you.
Eventually, I'm sure we will have our own caricatures somewhere on the internet.
Yeah. Maybe if we go to Kings Island for our birthday or something.
Ooh, I bet
I
Olivia
would
can
buy
do
that
characters.
T-shirt.
Yes. So that brings up a good point. I mentioned Olivia, who is one who has been on not Shift Beers, Saunders Stories a couple of
Yep.
times. Do you have a favorite out of any podcast, yours included?
Okay.
A favorite guest, one of those guests that you're like, man, they were so much fun. I'd love to listen to them, or in your podcast case, kind of have them on the show.
Oh, I know
again.
who his favorite guest is.
You
Okay.
can't say yourself.
No,
Marco.
I'm not going to. No, it's not
Okay.
me.
Okay.
Oh, it's not me.
You mentioned Olivia from Kings Island, and she's pretty far up there for
awesome,
me.
yeah,
I
yeah.
always enjoy when she's on there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yes, you do.
Do I?
Oh, you do.
Okay.
We know who your favorite is.
All right. Give me a hint of what my favorite is.
I know. Give us your favorite.
I really don't know off the top of my head.
No, it's Brett, isn't it?
Brett is my favorite person to have on my show.
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe other shows if other people could interview him the same way that I think he needs to be interviewed. But
I feel like he
yeah, we don't
has a
interview
very
him.
specific way of that you would need to kind of direct questions to, because I listened to the Bruce Guys Happy Hour podcast that they did, which was, I listened to it a year after it came out. I wasn't aware of it. It was phenomenal, and he is an amazing orator as far as speaking what he is thinking.
you've got to give him enough wiggle room to kind of
Yes.
go where he wants
Needs
to
go.
go.
Right.
So, for the listeners who don't know who we're talking about, go ahead, Gnome, and tell them who we're talking about.
Brett Coleman Baker from Urban Artifact
Mm-hmm.
is one of the more outspoken people within the Cincinnati beer industry, for good or bad. I think there's a lot of people that can't stand him because of that. But to me, it lends a lot of insight into this industry and to how a place like Urban Artifact ticks and why it's successful at what it is.
I feel like he's one of those people to where if you don't listen to him on multiple interviews, or if you don't have any direct interactions, you're not sure when he's being tongue-in-cheek and when he's being serious about what he is saying.
Right.
He had a lot to say about pack and plays at a certain brewery, but I think that if you
Was that him?
no.
Oh,
Well,
okay. No,
well,
it
he-
wasn't.
It's related.
No, it's a related statement, but that was not.
Oh,
that was not.
I
his
remember.
Statement. Yeah,
He was
But I
not a big
feel
fan
like-
of children in grocery stores at one point.
He was a
Yes.
child once.
He was
has
a
a
child
child
once.
He's his dad.
Yeah, it doesn't mean
And,
you have to. Doesn't mean you agree with everything that kids do.
Right.
At any given time, I read an amazing quote that I asked my sister, who has had multiple children. I said something like, "I love my toddler, but they're still an asshole." And I
Exactly.
asked my sister, I'm like, "So, is this fine?" She was like, "Oh yeah, I call my, I've."
But mine are terrorists.
You know, it's-
they
it's-
they
right,
terrorize people.
It doesn't mean that you don't love them. It doesn't mean that you're anti-kid, anything like that. But there are certain situations to where, this is going to sound weird, but to where kids belong and where kids don't belong. But there, I feel like it's how, if you know your kid, if you know that your kid is is a person that fits into a certain situation, cool. But if you know that your kid is the kind of kid that will not.
Some
I don't know.
here.
I don't
let
know.
me say
Yeah.
this, and we were going down a very
Yeah,
crazy rabbit hole here.
I
but
do
Which is
want.
what
I do want
butterflies
to
are
change
always
courses,
about,
but go
yes.
ahead and say what you're
there
gonna
are
say.
times where you think your kid is going to be one person, and you get them into a situation, and very quickly they are a different person.
Okay.
Just at the drop of a dime, you don't know what's going to happen. It
Okay.
just happens.
Okay.
You have to understand that that's probably going to piss some people off, and there will be people around you that look at you and say, "You're an asshole for having your kid here," and you are, but you're not.
Well, I feel like to
just
kind
gotta
of
be ready
counter that,
for that.
right? You have to be ready for it, and if your child, your partner, your whoever you're with, I mean, this is true for adults too.
Oh, absolutely.
To where you go out thinking, hey, it's going to be a good time, and all of a sudden, whoever you're with, it's like, okay, now you're a giant asshole for whatever reason. I don't know why.
Sorry about that, Julia.
I mean. They have not. It's only a soft ban, Marco.
Right.
It's not a permanent
Right.
ban. So we will make this right.
Yeah.
But I feel like as long as you are taking the action of, okay, I didn't think it was going to go this way. What can I do to correct the situation?
Right.
Be that leaving or whatever the case may be, going to a different area, whatever. My problem is if you're not willing to do that, you're like, well, we're here now, and whatever they're doing is going to be whatever they're going to do.
Right.
That's when it turns into for both parent and child, the asshole versus non-asshole situation.
Right.
I don't know. But Marco, yes, let's turn this
So
a different direction. Because
you've become a full-time Gnome
Yes.
content creator. You have your own photography business. That's great. What I hope the best for your business, and I'm sure
God,
this
yeah.
won't be this won't be the last time that you have a different platform other than your own to talk about some of that stuff. But a couple of weeks ago, Julie and I had a remote show where we talked about our show getting started. Now, your original show, Cincy Brewcast, that's been talked about on different articles, different, your own platform and such. When you met Mike Cisneros,
Right.
you and Mike started Cincy Brewcast, and you met up at
Mount Carmel.
Mount Carmel.
Right.
When you met up and you guys were just talking beer, doing just geeking out about beer.
Right.
Mike was in the news, right? In television?
Yeah, the production side.
Production side?
Yeah.
So how long after you met Mike did Cincy Brewcast come together?
I think it was a matter of weeks.
Very
It
very
was
quick.
fast. It was the night that I met him. We talked for a little while, and he's like, "Hey," I told him about the blog that I do,
Mm-hmm.
and he's like, "I got this idea."
How long had you been doing the blog before that?
Maybe a year. It wasn't very long.
All right.
He's like, I've got this idea that I've been playing around with, and I think I can figure out the technical side of how to make it happen and how to get it out there. But I don't know how to do the other side as far as how do I get into a brewery and talk to somebody, and what do we talk about, and how does that work? Do you care if I send you an email? And I said, oh, of course not. Send me an email. And the next day, or 2 days later or something, he sent me this giant email, and it was this outline of what Cincy Brewcast was, what it was supposed to be, what it was, kind of a newscast kind of thing where you're shooting to correspondence, and you have these segments during the show and all this, and it was outlined in like really, really crazy detail. It had
full-on business plan.
Yeah.
I mean,
You had from the beer fridge as a segment. You have beer school. You have the segment where you teach people about beer, and you have ask and answer and lightning round and all these different like segments of the show. And then within that, you cut to an interview of, here's 10 minutes with Braxton. They're getting ready to open a tap room, and it's exciting. Tell us about Braxton. And then back to the studio, and like it was very kind of sports radio kind of talk show kind of feeling. And we emailed back and forth. His daughter Tina was in the service industry. She was a bartender. He's like, I want to bring in like this panel of people that are part of the show. You have, the bartender. You have, the blogger. You've got somebody that's in production of beer. We had a guy that worked at Mount Carmel, who now is up at Basco Brewing up in Lorraine. His name was Chris Camboris. He was our fourth panelist, and he's like, I've got this idea. And so we
Oh,
like,
shit.
all right, well let's make it happen.
Son
Oh,
of
shit.
a
So
bitch. So
What's up?
what's up, man?
should we stop talking about him?
We should totally stop talking
All
about
right,
him.
so the oh shit was
Hold on. I got a button for this one.
Shit.
Chris from Shift Beers has walked into the building. He is avoiding us right now, which is, I don't know if that's smart on his behalf or if he's just being courteous. You never know with that
Is
guy.
never
Never know.
courteous.
But we did interrupt you for that.
Shit.
So please go ahead.
We
Go ahead.
love you, man.
So we set a date, and we said we're just gonna try this and see what happens. If we post the show, we post the show. If not, we don't. But let's figure it out, and we'll go from there. And so we sat around his kitchen table and put a shit.
Oh my God, what is happening? Gnome, I am so sorry.
It's all right.
I'm sorry, Gnome. Danny from Saunders Stories just walked in.
You can't plan this. I mean, what the hell is happening? First, when I got here, the Cintas guy was actually here, so I got to see the Cintas guy in action. And then Gnome walks in, and then Marco walks in, and now Chris and Danny walk in, and it's amazing, and I love this so much.
Yeah, awesome.
Anyway.
Shit.
All right, as you were saying.
So we sat around a table and we just made a podcast and figured it out from there. But that was over the span of a couple weeks, I think.
Okay.
That was very quick, though. That's pretty quick.
It took us like almost 2 months.
Yeah, and with the Gnome's help. And
hell yeah. Definitely don't want to discount that.
But our first episode was terrible. Like, if you go back and listen to it, it's not great. The quality sucks. We didn't know what the hell we were doing.
Did you do
any
guys
started
test
a lot better. No.
Okay, because what Marco and I did, and we sent you a couple of our test episodes, we're like, hey, this is what we recorded. This is what we're thinking about. Do we put this out into the universe or not?
But that leads me also, you can answer that question, but it also leads me to some other questions, I guess, after. How long before, I guess that wasn't really a question Julia was asking, but how long before, you were in it where you and Mike and his daughter and your other co-host really felt like, hey.
The other co-host dropped out pretty fast. He got another job and family stuff, and he had to move away. I think it was in 1 or 2 episodes.
I feel like I don't feel like I know I had listened to episodes with Mike, you and Mike and Mike's daughter on them. So I've been listening for a long time. But when did you feel like you got into a groove? Like this?
I still don't feel like I'm in a groove.
No?
I mean, as you can tell by the fact that I haven't had a show for the last 3 or 4
that has nothing
weeks.
to do with being in a groove.
No.
But that does to me. Like, that's the side. Like, I can. Technically speaking, I can make a podcast that sounds good, and I can put together an interview and that kind of stuff. But the groove, that's to me, that's the easy part. The hard part is the stuff behind the scenes, planning out a show, getting a guest that is going to be a good guest that you can trust will show up and will create good content.
I'm here, man.
That people care
Marco,
about.
I'm here, man. That's what I bring to the table. I'm here.
But like, that's, to me, that's the side that's harder.
Mm-hmm.
So getting into the groove is, to me, that part of it, the organization of being able to create a podcast that you can put out week after week after week and keep that quality up.
Well, the other thing is, too, I mean, certainly for us, we have a bank of podcasts that we're going to listen to.
Right.
And every now and then that strays here or there to add another one, on a occasional basis. But we know what we're going to listen to now. What their content provides is always changing.
Right.
But how we come and talk about it is our own way, yet similar. Right? And so we want every show to stand out on its own and be different and unique. But, there's still a format to that. When you go on Cincy Brewcast and you talk to all these other people, it's always a little bit of you don't know what you're going to get till you're in it.
Yeah,
right?
A little bit, but I mean, you can, especially if it's people that you've had on the show before.
Sure,
that's the advantage of being around for a while, is that most of the people I talk to have been on the show before, or at least one person within the group that you've got has been on the show before, or you've talked to before, have interviewed for something else, whatever it may be. So I know what I'm getting into for the most part, but I don't. That's not tough for me most of the time.
So this is 0.5. I mean, we're not going to go for an hour, although we can go for 3 hours. The next thing I want to say is, you have a whole aspect of content from your website that people who are looking to start podcasts
Right.
can benefit from.
Right. What I want to throw in, and not to overstep.
No, please,
what,
go
what
ahead.
you were going to say, Marco, but I wanted to make sure that I asked this before I either forget, because I forget things all the time. Is I know you mentioned photography a lot, but for Gnome Creative, for your business, what kind of content do you want to help others create? Is it just photography? Is it
Are you doing the same thing that you were before, but only as a freelancer?
right? So that,
yes
so that
and
people
no.
that
I
need
mean,
this. So the
look,
people that need your services can get your services if they,
I got bills to pay. I'll do just about anything.
including
now.
tossing salads.
If you need something
Hey,
created, I will help you create it.
Excellent.
The majority of what I do is photography related, but that doesn't mean that videography isn't a big part of it, and even audio creation is a part of it. But
Okay, good,
photography
because
is the
I know
majority.
that we have shouted you out on the show before as saying, for all your audio, video, imagery needs, go to Gnome Creative, and I wanted to make sure that we were not falsely representing what you
whatever
what you wanted
people
to
need
do,
created,
so.
I create.
What if somebody needs a 3D printed image of Jessica Simpson?
I will create it.
Ooh.
Oh, there you go.
I don't
hey,
know
What
how
if-
to do that, but I will
put
figure
it out there.
So what if someone would like a 3D printed image of Chris's missing ball? Is that something
Whoa!
that
I think I could do that. I don't think you heard.
Oh man, it was all good things about you, man. All good things about you. It was nothing attached to you. Literally nothing.
Nothing attached to you
That
at
is
all.
attached to you at all. Okay.
I think Chris has had beers. I just want to say.
It is very possible.
I think Danny's had beers too.
Hey,
But anyway,
as long
so
as they're safe.
so you asked about Gnome Creative,
Yes.
and I asked about. What did I? Podcasting something somewhat.
I don't even know anymore.
We had beers, and it's all good.
So Mike was in technical, TV and that sort of thing. Did you dig into? Oh, I talked about the website and the help that is available there, and that we perused, and then just didn't take any of the advice from, which we were wrong for not doing. But when did you dig into that? Was it with Mike, or was it
From the podcast side of things?
correct?
It was a little bit with so Mike's from the beginning. We would record. Mike worked nights a lot, and he may or may not have taken the show to work with him and edited in his his spare time, and then he would have it up that night, ready to go the next morning. So we would record, and by the time we woke up the next morning, the show was up there. For good or bad, Mike was not the best audio editor that I've ever met, but we
He
also
got the job done.
we this was before the days of multi-track recorders where editing is really easy. It was
you listen for the things you need to cut.
it
and
was
that's-
literally
yeah.
like one track pre-mix. We were mixing two tape, kind of like you were recording live. We were recording live a lot of times. It was very different. As the show
Do
started
you ever
to grow,
not record live? I mean, that's an odd. If you think
No,
about
so
it, that's an odd statement. But
we
you know-
were broadcasting live while we were recording.
Gotcha. Okay.
so
okay.
you were
so
just-
you could actually listen as you were going.
We do not do that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
we are.
Gotcha.
We are.
I do
we
not
are,
either anymore.
Yeah, we
Because
are
it is a pain in the ass.
recording, and we do not broadcast live.
Yet.
I think that's
Me-
probably the smart way to do it. If you want to do something live, make it its own thing that people know is live, in my opinion. But we did it. We tried it. As the show started growing, as far as going out and doing stuff live versus in studio, some of our gear started to change, and with that, I started doing some research. I had a lot of stuff laying around the house from music stuff. So we started pulling some of that in and trying to figure out how to make that work with what we have. And
So from I hate to stop your strain
No,
of
yeah.
consciousness there, but you're a musician.
I guess depends on who you ask.
Part time. Well, you play instrument.
I make noise in the basement sometimes.
You play instrument or instruments.
Yes.
So you had equipment for that.
Right.
Yeah.
So lots of microphones and mixers and stuff like that laying around. So we started to bring some of that into it, and then from that, you start kind of trying to figure out, all right, well, we've got the setup that works really good. What is the weak point of the setup that we have now? Then you take and you attack that weak point, and then once you get that to a certain point, then all right, now what's the weak point? And you attack that, and you start to kind of then grow things over time and get the setup better. It's a whole lot easier now when you're starting a podcast than it was then.
I feel like Mark
mixers,
and I kind of walked in at
there are
a
mixers
very
that are just
golden,
built for making a podcast like that.
Right,
that
exactly.
Didn't exist at all. Like that would have blown my mind when we started.
And it did exist when we started. However, putting that kind of investment at that time for us just was a barrier to entry. So we went pretty low grade, and then
we wanted to make sure it was going to stick before we started putting. We kind of joked about this before. We're like, we don't want to start by putting $1,000 into something. Let's start with a couple hundred, and then we ended up starting with close to $1,000.
Close to $1,000
and stuff. And now we've
yes.
But it's been worth
exactly.
it. It's been absolutely worth it.
It's without a doubt. And I wouldn't have approached it another way because, for our podcast, I mean, you and I had never met face to face before.
Yeah.
We didn't know what our dynamic was going to be, and so
I don't think you ever do though. Even if it's somebody that you know, as soon as you get behind a microphone like that, relationship starts to shift, and you figure out who's. Like, you look at the Shift Beers crew. When they've settled into these different roles within that group of people. There's no way, even working with somebody, that how that's going to pan out. Before the show.
Sure. All Marco and I had done was make fun of podcasts on the Weekly Pine and chat, and we're like, this will translate awesome to a podcast. Here we are.
I don't mind at all that we, even though spending the investment that we did, can call it, tiptoeing into it. But then, the biggest upgrade we made was the mixer and, being able to have the ability for Julia, who, by the way, for those who have been with Truth Beer Pod from the beginning, Julia's full-time job's in IT. Julia does the editing of the show.
I try.
And so once the show's done, I leave, Julia leaves, and all of it is in Julia's hands, 100%.
Right.
Like, she doesn't send me a copy ahead of time. That's all her putting the show together. I'm one of the first people to listen as soon as it comes up, only because I want to know what's out there. If people in the industry or my family, want to, contact me about any of the content, but I have total faith in Julia's ability and also sensors.
If there's anything that I ever have a question about, I will send either a clip to Marco or hey, we talked about this for like 30 minutes. I don't think it actually fits in anywhere to the show. It was funny, and that's kind of where these 0.5s came from. And I think one of the first ones was with Chris from Shift Beers. It was such a great conversation about food, but it didn't fit into what our podcast is supposed to be about.
Yep.
So I'm like, hey, what would you think if I cut this and made it its own separate mini episode?
Right.
For people that had any interest whatsoever in hearing a little more of the conversation that happened that I didn't want to just leave on the cutting room floor.
I feel like my show has been much more of a journey in a lot of those regards. Like, I look at those first episodes and they feel very different and they sound very different than what the show is now. And there's been you can get these markers along the way where it's like, all right, this is where that changed, and this is where that changed, this is where that changed, and then it just kind of meanders along that path to get it to where it is today versus being thought out about it. We had no idea what the hell we were doing.
How often, and this is kind of that technical behind the curtain peek into Cincy Brewcast, how many times have there been parts of a conversation that you've had with someone that you're recording as part of the show that you've cut out to where maybe you would want to do, like, to use our terminology, like a 0.5, where you're like, man, that would have been really cool, but it was
never,
it didn't fit.
never,
Really?
never,
Okay,
never.
so-
That's been cut out that I'm like, I want to put that in. The
Okay,
only time
okay.
that things have been cut out, it's because somebody said something they weren't supposed to say,
Okay.
or they called me the next day and said, "Look, I'm going to get in trouble if you post that. Will you cut this
Right.
part out?"
Right.
And even that's only happened maybe 2-3 times.
So
in the
for
history of the
you,
show.
because I know for us, like, we'll record for an hour and a half, and you might get an hour-long episode. There might
Right.
be 30 minutes of either dead air when we take a break to get more beer.
You see,
or
we don't
whatever
take
the case.
breaks. I don't.
So for you guys, and this is one of
I say
those
we
things that I'm
very
always
loosely.
this is one of those things that I'm always interested in about other podcasts like Shift Beers and Sonder Stories. So if you put out an episode that's an hour and 15 minutes, chances are good that you only recorded maybe an hour and a half or an hour and 15
Yeah,
minutes.
probably an hour
Like,
and
you
15
don't
minutes,
really
yeah.
okay.
For the most
that's
part. I mean,
very cool.
there
That's
are
very cool.
some episodes where if I'm sitting there and I can see my guest is uncomfortable and they got to pee or something, I'm like, look, if
Oh,
you got to
right,
go,
right.
we'll take a break. We'll
Right.
we'll cut it.
And
but
that brings
that's-
up another kind of
but that's rare.
question, more for my own kind of insecurities, my own, I don't know what I'm doing. Do you ever stop recording, or do you just turn the mics off when there are things like bathroom breaks? Because for me, I know that for
I've done
Marco and
both.
I, when we've had beer breaks, bathroom breaks, I would hit pause, and then we would come back, start talking, and half an hour later, amazing conversation later, I'd go, I never hit record again.
Yeah,
So-
I've done it both ways, to where we either pause or stop, or.
Okay.
But again, it's not normal for me to stop the show in the middle.
Sure.
I feel like it
Makes sense. Okay.
for an interview show the way that I do it. I feel like it.
You
it
schedule
does,
like an hour to block of time with them, and that is your block
Right.
of time. And okay,
And you
okay.
when you start, when you sit down with somebody and you start talking, there's a very different type of conversation that's going to happen than there is at 40 minutes.
True.
Like, that's very different types of questions, very different types of answers, very different feeling to it.
Makes sense.
I don't want
Okay,
to. I don't
okay.
want to stop that momentum and that feeling that's going. Then you got to start that thing happening again.
Very cool. We're coming up on 30 minutes, so I just want to close
Marco
on...
stopped my momentum. Did you see that?
I did, but he did it in a very graceful, very nice way. So yeah,
Maybe.
well done.
This is not the podcast where you're going to spout what you need to do if
Right.
you're going to start a podcast.
There are
How-
plenty of podcasts out there. If you guys, if there's anybody that's listening to this that does not have a podcast that wants to, those podcasts do exist.
Yes.
Yeah, and
School of Podcasting, Audacity the Podcast are the two best, for the record, if anybody is
awesome.
listening.
And how do they find your suggestions, your information?
There's not an easy way right now.
Okay.
Because the website's just been rebuilt because of the new business. I will, when you guys post this post
Fridays.
on Friday.
Friday evenings. It is
no,
now Tuesday
I
evening.
can't promise that I'll have something up.
No, that's fine.
When you listen, you can type it in, and it probably won't exist right now, but it will. Just go to gnomecreative.com/podcasting, and eventually it'll be there.
But for now, gnomecreative.com is the best way to reach you, or a good way
It
to
does,
see
yeah.
what you do as far as the content creation that you're willing to help anyone in the Cincinnati area.
Sure. I mean, but
with
you
creation. Okay.
you can see obviously see the podcast. You can see the audio stuff. I have a YouTube channel. You can see video stuff that I do. Instagram, you see the pictures that I take. So I mean, it's out there.
And
Just
check
if
out our
you-
show notes. We
So-
link to Gnome Creative as well as the Gnome's Twitter and Instagram accounts, as long as you're still cool with us.
Yeah, of course.
Putting those out there.
course.
So check
Yeah.
our show notes for that information. He has helped us out immensely. We
Immensely.
cannot thank him enough for the advice, for the time that he has spent with us. So
Yeah.
we wanted to make sure that we pay that forward and let him
thank you.
give his business the voice, as big of a voice as we may or may not be, but to give that back to you to
Sure, I
put
appreciate
it
it.
out in the universe. Yeah.
Yeah, and congratulations on, this big step.
And for following the advice that you've always given your kids,
That's
as
right.
per a previous
Yeah,
episode.
that's pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Oh, it's absolutely awesome.
That's very awesome. Other than that, hey, it's always great hanging out with you, having some beers.
Likewise.
Thank you. This was I didn't expect we were going to get this great joy today, but I am happy that you came up and
Of course.
hung out with us.
Yeah.
And you even made the offer. Like, I can just sit here and hang out with you guys. I'm like, you
Yeah,
could,
if you're
but
here,
you're
we're
not, buddy. You're gonna get on this show.
Joke's on you. We're putting a microphone in front of you and giving you some shitty headphones. It's
Yeah,
gonna be
and
great.
so
Yeah.
thank you very much. This was great. I'm sure we'll get, I don't know, on each other's show
Yeah,
or
of course.
cross paths or drink at
We
another
will,
place.
We will meet again.
Oh, yeah.
Soon.
That kind of sounded
So,
like a thread, but it
yeah, thank you for all of us for coming on this short journey to explore the Gnarly Gnome and podcasting. And what we'll do is we'll sign off for today
with
and
a plastic cup cheer.
plastic cup cheer,
And we'll
then
see you next week.
come on and check us out next week.
Hell yeah. Have a great one, everyone.
Bye, everyone.